Members, good afternoon. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for attending the meeting of Panel on Constitutional Affairs this afternoon. Item number 1, information papers issued since the last meeting. After the last meeting, the Secretariat has issued 2 documents. First is a letter from Dr. TIK Chi-yuen and another letter from Ms. Carmen KAN. We have noted the 2 letters, and the items mentioned in the letters will be added to the list of discussions. That's item number 1. If members have no comments to make, we now move on to the next item. Items for discussion at the next meeting. Please note that the next regular meeting will take place on the 20th of March, which is a Monday at 2:30 in the afternoon. These items are proposed by the administration. First, work report by the chairman of the Equal Opportunity Commission, and 2, voter registration 2023. These 2 items. If there are no questions, Mr. Tick. Thank you for letting me say something. For the 2 items for discussion in the next meeting, I don't think there is any urgency. I mentioned about district council election. I do think that we should do more about it because the election will take place in November or October. Perhaps this can be an item for discussion in the next meeting. Understand. Let me say to you that in relation to the upcoming election of the district council, we have approached the administration to forward our views. Apart from Mr. Tick, other members have also talked about this. Whether there is anything related to the district council, of course, we would like to be informed of any proposed amendments. We have forwarded our view very clearly to the administration. We note Mr. Tick's view. We'll monitor the situation. When conditions are ripe, as far as possible, we will make arrangements for a discussion. Your view is noted. Mr. Tick? Is it the case that if we have the opportunity to talk about it, it can be in the form of a special meeting? We don't rule that out. I think it depends. Depends on the timing. We note your view. If there are no other views, Mr. Shanghai Long? Thank you. Just now, you say that there are 2 items on the 20th of March. The second one is voter registration 2023. There was an occasion when Mr. Zhang, the secretary, came to answer questions. We asked about making use of I Am Smart for voter registration. The secretary said that he would start work and he will look into contracting out the arrangements. Perhaps for the next regular meeting, please talk to the administration so that we can hear about any progress. Thank you, Mr. Shang. Your comment is noted. If there are no other questions, item 3. Proposals to appoint subcommittee on policy issues. Mr. Chan Yung, on the 17th of January this year, sent us a letter. You find it in front of you. Mr. Chan suggested setting up a subcommittee on improving practical electoral arrangements. We will first hear from Mr. Chan and then from members. Mr. Chan, please. Thank you. I suggest that a subcommittee on improving practical electoral arrangements is to be formed. All members all 90 of us are very experienced in elections. We do agree with the general principle, that is, an election has to be clean, fair, and open. But there are some details. And the agencies in charge, say for example the REO, the Registration Electoral Office, or the Election Affairs Committee, they have made some comments. Ballot paper and registration by paper is quite cumbersome, and it undermines the efficiency of an election in modern times. It's been quite a long time since we have last looked into this. We asked about the policy intent. The officials said to us that details should not be set out because they may be pitfalls, and the case will have to go to the court. But there are details. We want to look at these details. Well, I have drawn reference from previous experience. We do think that a subcommittee can have a more focused discussion on detailed arrangements instead of a more general committee for discussion. If we can start our work, then we can embark upon our work as soon as possible. Now we have an improved electoral arrangement with Patriots administering Hong Kong. We do need to update these arrangements to keep up with the times. Thank you, Mr. Chan. He has outlined the details of his proposal. Let's see if members would like to say anything. I see some hands. Ms. Priscilla Leung. Thank you. If there is time, I do think that it is worth forming this subcommittee. I've been criticizing the electoral legislation that they are not conducive to elections because of tedious details. A lot of candidates are too afraid to publish their candidacy, and they've spent too much time on administrative details. Perhaps the Secretariat can make coordination work. A lot of these subcommittees have completed their work. I think there is a slot for us. The details outlined in the letter by Mr. Chan is something that we have gone through. Our supporters have given consent, but the publicity material was produced earlier than the filling of the consent forms. The case went to court, and they spent about $2 million on cost, and all things resulted in a criminal record. This is rather cruel if a professional is involved. So apart from the administrative side, there are other issues as well. We have been voicing our comments, and they have not been followed up. We should separate administrative aspect from the criminal aspect. ICAC are tasked to handle even a typo. I think it's just an overkill. I support the forming of this subcommittee. We're talking about problems that candidates have experienced in the past decade. Thank you, Ms. Leung. 3 members have indicated to speak: Mr. Lai Tong Kwok, Mr. Martin Liu, Mr. TIK Chi-yuen, and Mr. Shanghai Long, and Mr. Tang Fei. For better time management, I need to limit the speaking time 2 minutes each in relation to Mr. Chan's proposal. 2 minutes each. Mr. Lai Tong Kwok. Thank you. I support Mr. Chan's proposal. The first item on the work plan is to review voter eligibility and registration procedure. Under the Basic Law, it is stated that permanent residents of Hong Kong has to have the right to participate in an election, but there is a very vague definition of ordinarily resident. If there are questions, you will have to go to the High Court. This is time-consuming. The second point, facilitating Hong Kong voters to vote. That's indeed important. The government strongly encouraged Hong Kong people to pursue their career or go to the Greater Bay Area, GBA. A number of residents have indeed gone there. A lot of them are elderly people. If they have to come just to cast their vote, is an ordeal. And I do agree that, this arrangement is based on reason, but it's something that was set a very long time ago. We should not blindly follow it. And under the electoral legislation, there are indeed cumbersome requirements. We do need to make improvements. These systems are first put in place in a stone age, but we're now in a different age, an age of technology. Regardless of the result, I do think that the proposal itself is worth pursuing. Mr. Martin Liu, thank you. I support Mr. Chan's proposal. This request has been made over many years, but the relevant bureau only tackles symptoms without addressing the root of the issue. The terms of reference stated in the letter is to study legal and administrative measures relating to existing electoral arrangements and make recommendations. I would change the wording a bit to say that it should be a comprehensive review. I think Mr. Chan is too polite. I think the word should be review instead of study. Yes, a comprehensive review is important. Mr. Tick. I do agree that we need a comprehensive review. After every election, the EAC would give us a report making recommendations that are not followed up. So these are just hot air. This is just hot air. I think government officials are afraid to be criticized as unfair. That's why we see a stone age of the election system, and that they are too calcified. We've all been candidates in an election. When it comes to counting of votes, it takes forever. Sometimes some of us are resigned to the result of the election, and we would rather get it over and done with as soon as possible. And I do think that with more slots becoming available, we can form this subcommittee. Next, Mr. Sheng Hai Long. I agree with Mr. Chan's proposal, and I also echo the views of members who have spoken before me. Under the current election system, independent candidates are on a disadvantage, because when it comes to election expenses, publicity, registration using an electronic means, I think it is rather unfavorable to us. I hope that there will be a level playing field for all candidates in future elections. Mr. Tang Fei, I agree with what the other members have said, and I also agree with Mr. Chan's suggestion. Under 3D of Mr. Chan's letter, that is 3B, that is to facilitate Hong Kong voters to vote. Well, apart from making it easy for voters on the mainland to vote, what about those overseas? We need to give them the same treatment. Regarding revocation of voter registration, we need to review the situation. When the REO sent a letter to the registered address of the voter, when they don't hear an answer, they simply just cancel the registration. That is a dubious approach. If you cancel the voter registration, that means you have taken away that person's right to vote, and this right is enshrined in the Basic Law. You can't just take it away by a letter. So this should be a major area under study by this subcommittee.
Thank you. Members who have requested to speak have already expressed their views. No members are against setting up the subcommittee. I believe that all of you are in line with Mr. Chan in relation to setting up the subcommittee on improving the election arrangements. This will be pending activation in the House Committee. On to the next agenda item. This is the end of item number 3. 4. Briefing by the Privacy Commissioner for Personal Data. We will now invite the administration in. Thank you. Members who would like to speak, you can press the button now. Thank you, Privacy Commissioner for Personal Data and the representative. Commissioner, Ms. Ada Zhong, please walk us through the documents submitted to us. Members then will be invited to speak. Thank you, Chair. Chair, members, overall, in 2022, the PCPD continued to monitor and regulate the implementation of the Personal Data Privacy Ordinance. In relation to issues in dispute, the PCPD provided advice, especially in relation to the new ordinance, the ordinances in relation to doxing, vaccine pass, vaccine arrangements, as well as work from home. The use of drones. Within the year, the PCPD continued to organize face-to-face and online seminars, and also issued materials, press releases, leaflets, and responded to media inquiries. The PCPD has been actively promoting the relevant messages in relation to the protection of privacy in combating doxing-related activities. In relation to the amendments, it came into effect on the 8th of October 2021. The PCPD, starting from October 2021 to the end of the next year, the PCPD has dealt with a number of cases, in total of 2,128. Through active inspection, a total of 114 cases. Well, in collaboration with the police, we mounted a total of 12 arrests, of whom 5 people were arrested for doxing-related offenses. As of now, 3 people have already been convicted, with 1 being sentenced. I'd like to point out the PCPD has already established a mechanism to work with the DOJ and the police. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the DOJ and the police for their support for the work of the PCPD. In 2022, there were 2 cases contravening the new regulations in relation to doxing-related activities. The defendant and his ex-girlfriend, after breaking up, disclosed their own personal data. In June 2022, the defendant was arrested. He had pled guilty and he was arrested and convicted. In December 2022, the defendant was sentenced to a term of 8 months by the court. We think that the term of 8 months had a deterrent effect, which highlighted the fact that doxing-related offenses are serious offenses. Offenders will be subject to immediate imprisonment. The other case related to money dispute without permission by the subject. On social media platforms in 2 groups, their own personal data were revealed. They were disclosed in December 2022 after trial. The defendant was convicted of 2 counts of offenses related to the breach of personal data. It was adjourned. For the newly confirmed power in relation to investigation, from evidence collection and initiating prosecution, there were simplified procedures to expedite prosecution as well as investigation. The first conviction case in June 2022, the PCPD made arrest in the same year. The defendant was convicted less than 4 months after the arrest by the PCPD. At the end of 2022, the PCPD has issued over 1,500 cessation notices to 26 online platforms, requesting the removal of over 17,700 doxing messages. The rate of compliance was over 90%. In some cases, the messages being removed were not only doxing messages, but also the entire channel for doxing purposes, in order to heighten public awareness of the relevant regulations. In 2022, the PCPD continued with its publicity and education initiatives, including television and audio clips on radio stations. Posters, leaflets were distributed. The PCPD also held seminars. We also promoted the relevant regulations in relation to doxing and breach of personal data. 3,848 cases where complaints were received, up by 15% mainly after the amendments to the bill. There were more complaints in relation to doxing-related activities. Over 100 in relation to property sector were received. Some 4 complaints in relation to property. We have already issued an investigation report. The 4 companies breached the relevant principles, DPP, data protection principles. There were storage, use, and security. We issued cessation notices to guard against further breaches. We also made recommendations to the property sector. We also updated the guidelines issued to the property management companies. In addition, a healthcare organization. In one of the incidents, we investigated the incident and issued an investigation report. The PCPD found that such an act breached DPP 3 of the ordinance, that is, the use of personal data. Cessation notice was issued to the enforcement notice was issued to the relevant companies. 105 cases in relation to the leakage of personal data were received in the same year. 392 inspections were conducted with 5 routine investigations. 5 cases of personal data leakage. We have already issued a report, including email system, which was hacked by hackers. The medical data was accidentally disposed of. There were also cyber attacks and voter data being leaked. In all of these cases, the PCPD found that the relevant personal data users breached number 4 of the DPP. We already issued enforcement notices to the relevant companies, advised them of the relevant breach, and guard against further occurrence of the breaches. In view of the widespread use of the social media platforms, the PCPD issued guidelines. It reviewed the 10 most widely used social media platforms. The PCPD provided concrete advice in relation to protecting personal data and also make recommendations in this regard. With the advanced development of digital platforms, as well as the heightened expectations of the personal data, we already carried out site visit and also issued an inspection report. In 2022, we received a total of 19,929 inquiries, a drop of 15%, that is 17,651. There were phone scams, and this showed a rising trend. In September 2022, we set up a hotline dealing with the relevant complaints and inquiries. It was a personal data fraud prevention hotline. A total of 707 inquiries were received in 2022, an increase of 26% compared with 557 cases in 2021. At the global level, the PCPD actively engaged in the activities in 2022, including the one in July 2022. Hong Kong hosted Asia Pacific Privacy Authorities Forum, the 57th. It was one of the celebratory events of the 25th anniversary of the establishment of the HASAR. Over 110 representatives attended. We explored a series of topics. We showed our investigation results, and we also told the good stories of Hong Kong. In relation to the strategic focus in 2023, we will continue to keep in view doxing-related activities, and we will take timely and effective actions. Through education and publicity efforts, we will raise public awareness in order to clamp down on doxing-related offenses. In view of the rising trend of personal data on social media platforms, the PCPD will make it one of the strategic focuses in 2023. In addition to enhancing publicity and education, the PCPD will issue leaflets and guidelines in relation to the use of mobile phones or other electronic devices. We will advise on how to improve the security of personal data. In order to facilitate the development of digital economy and e-government, the PCPD will continue to provide opinions and recommendations from a perspective of protecting personal data privacy. In supporting the development of Hong Kong as an international innovation, technology, and data hub, the PCPD will proceed with the efforts to offer professional and useful advice to the government on the protection of personal data privacy. The PCPD is working closely with the government to comprehensively review the ordinance and formulate concrete proposals for legislative amendments. We will make reference to the relevant laws of other jurisdictions and also take account of the actual situation in Hong Kong to put forward practicable legislative amendment proposals to strengthen the protection of personal data privacy. We aim at consult members in relation to amendments of the ordinance in the second quarter of this year. We will also boost our promotion efforts in order to heighten public awareness of the protection of personal data. We will also promote the setup of a system. One of the flagship activities is the Privacy Friendly Awards. It aims at establishing a personal data privacy system. On the global level, we will continue to take part in assemblies, and we will also work in collaboration with other organizations in order to tell the good stories of Hong Kong. We will spare no efforts in discharging our responsibilities, and will play our role of facilitator, educator, to protect the personal data privacy of citizens. We will also promote the culture of respecting the personal privacy of others.
Thank you, Commissioner. I see that 5 members have pressed the requested speak button. We have Martin Liu, Carmen KAN, Priscilla Leung Tang Fei, and Lai Tong Kwok. 4 minutes each, question and answer included. We'll begin with Mr. Martin Liu. According to the paper, in October 2021 to the end of 2022, the Office of the PCPD has handled 2,128 cases of doxing. In relation to 114 of them, they have started specified investigation. The office has made 12 arrests, prosecuted 5 people, with 3 having been convicted. So in relation to the numerous doxing cases and a fewer number of prosecutions, why? In relation to law enforcement and collection of evidence, have you encountered any difficulties? Thank you, Mr. Liu. We'll hear from the Commissioner. I thank Mr. Liu for his question. As at the end of 2022, in relation to 12 cases, we have made arrests. 5 of these arrests have entered a process of prosecution. So far, 3 have been convicted. That's the information I gave you, Commissioner. Well, as at today, there are 3, not 2. That's why I would like to give you the supplementary information. There is 1 case in which the defendant has been sentenced. So from criminal investigation to prosecution to listing in court, it takes time, and there is a process to go through. As at the end of last year, the number of prosecutions stands at 5. Our work continues. Depending on the result of investigation within this year, we will take further action. This is the first year when we have the power to enforce the law. So we can only give you information about cases where there is sufficient evidence for prosecution and cases that have gone to the court. But there are other cases in the pipeline. What I'd like to say is that in relation to doxing cases, the effectiveness of investigation, law enforcement, apart from prosecution, we have issued cessation notices. With the amendment ordinance coming into effect to the end of last year, we have issued 1,500 cessation notices. The compliance rate is over 90%. I'm happy to tell members that in some cases it's not just a removal of the doxing messages, it's the removal of the entire doxing channel. So there is a huge reduction in volume of doxing messages. So that's an outcome of our work. And there is also a huge reduction in doxing activities resulting from a difference in political opinion. And that is something to do with social atmosphere becoming more harmonious. I have another question. The office in August 2021 issued a standard for a comparison of privacy setting of social media. Well, there is a guideline. So far, we have no guidelines for cookies. And this guidelines, that is guidance notes on data security measures for information and communications technology. Do you have a more detailed guidance? What about enhanced regulation of electronic commerce activities to make sure that there will be ethical AI technology use? And I think it should cover transparency, security, the collection and use of personal data. So we need more information about compliance with the guideline. It's indeed a very good question as to whether there is a need for regulation in this respect. We see continuous discussion in the international arena regarding privacy and the use or development of AI. There may not be any direct regulation in Hong Kong, but looking at international development, in August 2021, we issued a guidance note. The note covers 7 major principles. These are guiding principles used internationally. We hope that we will use this guideline to help the sector so that they have something to base on when they use artificial intelligence. This is to dovetail the healthy development of and use of AI. Regarding regulation of e-commerce, views are quite polarized. On one hand, we have views saying that there should be strengthened regulation, and for others, they say that it should be done in the form of a guideline. In the UK, there is a new piece of legislation. This aims to remove barriers. If there is a fully automated decision, the data subject may not have to give full consent. It can be done in the form of an objection. So we're aware of the polarized views. We'll keep in view of the development in the international community before we decide whether we should strengthen regulation or do it by way of guidelines. Our current approach is to take into account the development of the sector. We issue guidelines and we provide views in due course to draw their attention to international ethical standards. Next, Ms. Carmen KAN. Thank you. I'd like to declare that I am a member of the Advisory Committee of Privacy and Personal Data. Paragraph 41 to 43 in the paper mentioned that the Office of the PCPD and the government will look into the PDPO. They have responded to our views. In October last year, in a report meeting, we talked about legislative amendment. Previously, it was focused on doxing. The commissioner said that in the second quarter, the proposals will come to LegCo. And on the 17th of January, I sent a letter to this panel. This is in relation to protection of personal data. And when the government obtains data, how do they make sure that there is a sufficient protection? We see that the Information Commissioner's Office in the UK require their commissioner to participate in the development of smart economy or smart government. Perhaps we can have a discussion when we talk about the legislation. The government doesn't just provide public service, they're also in charge of maintaining public order. And that's covered in the Commissioner's report. In paragraph 40, there is a brief report that the OGCIO, the Office of Government Information Service, would, also consult the Office of the PCPD. What role does the Office of the PCPD play? Well, we want to know whether the government, whilst pursuing digital economy development, they will also protect personal data. Ms. Kan has sent a letter to the government that is in relation to the upgrading amendment of e-commerce. She gave us a letter and she asked for it to be listed as an item for discussion. Perhaps you can use the chance to explain, Commissioner, and maybe at the right time you will also be given a chance to have a proper discussion. Thank you. I thank Ms. Kan for her question. And this is a very good issue because when it comes to the use, development of new technology and the protection of privacy, there has been continuous discussion. New technology has posed unprecedented challenges to the protection of personal data. We have been monitoring development locally and that of overseas. It is inevitable that in the development of a smart city, data is used. In the UK, in 2017, a Digital Economy Act was introduced. That is a legal framework for data sharing of public bodies to improve government services. In Singapore, in 2018, there was a Public Sector Act. Data Security Act provides a legal framework and require government e-government service to meet all the requirements. We will monitor the situation overseas. When we're consulted by the government, we make sure that we will provide proper advice. When it comes to data in these overseas jurisdictions, it's not just about personal data. It's beyond that. Say, for example, healthcare data, traffic flow data, cargo flow at border control points. So it's not just about personal data. And that is outside the scope of the PDPO. We notice that for overseas jurisdictions, there is an umbrella piece of legislation covering all different types of data. That is the case in UK. That is Digital Economy Act, and Singapore is the Public Sector Government Act. They cover not just personal data, but every different kinds of data. We have forwarded our view to the government. It's for the government to decide when they develop digital economy whether to consider solely personal data or an umbrella of data.
Right.
Dr. Priscilla Leung. Thank you, Chair. I'm glad to see the report of the Commissioner. In amending this piece of legislation, we aimed at empowering the Commissioner to start the work of prosecution by way of a one-stop approach. We need to enter the next phase. After dealing with the doxing-related activities, the public may think that this is our major purpose in respecting personal data and preventing the abuse of personal data. Or even there might be negligent act of leaking the data. Some of them are in relation to property management companies. When we entered the building, we were told to produce our identification documents. But after all, our personal data are all recorded when we entered the building. In terms of negligence, there is a TransUnion Company Limited. Even our former chief executive was one of the victims. For United Christian Hospital, a technician brought home the USB drive, leaking all the data of the patients. Cathay Pacific likewise leaked data of 9 million of people. Because of negligence, some voters' information went missing, causing alarming concern in the community. So, the government and the public sector also have to work together. Well, they have to redouble their efforts. The property management companies, because of ignorance, did not have clear guidelines. Probably there was lack of education as well. The status of the ICAC, they promoted that even gifting one can of Coca-Cola would be liable to penalty. They have mounted quite a lot of publicity efforts. Is it all worth it? Much like when we were promoting environmental protection, we held a series of ISO. How many could we protect in the environment? Like ISO 9000, they were environmental protection indicators. Recently, environmental auditing in privacy, personal data, can we do the same to educate the enterprises, including the government, different bureaus and departments, including public hospitals, public organizations? There were frequent cases of negligence, leaking the data. Will we consider addressing the problem at its root so that we will promote the protection of personal data internally, so that there are enough guidelines for the staff to follow? Commissioner, please be succinct. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Dr. Priscilla Leung. The question is indeed a good one, and this is one of our focuses. Recently, we just launched an award scheme. We encourage setting up a personal privacy scheme. It is a privacy-friendly awards. And there are KPIs in this privacy-friendly awards. Depending on the KPIs they meet, we will give them awards in order to encourage enterprises to fare well in this regard. For some sectors, if they have to handle a great deal of personal data, such as personal data databases in 2022, we conducted a site visit in one of the companies to check on their personal data privacy protection system. We will continue with this initiative in the coming year to see how they can better protect personal data, to see whether they are faring well in this regard. We will adopt the mode of name and shame. On the one hand, we encourage enterprises to do better. On the other hand, we will encourage the companies to make improvements, to see how they can twitch the systems to make improvements. Is it under the purview of the PCPD? Will you directly follow this work? Yes, we will follow up on this work. Next, Mr. Tang Fei. Thank you, Chair. One inquiry. Has the PCPD collaborated with the police force? Do you have any mechanism? Technologies are developing in leaps and bounds. If we just rely solely on the PCPD, can the PCPD cope with all the workload? A quick example. The PCPD worked on a couple of doxing-related cases. Probably they were emotional disputes. In this case, a man leaked the data of the former girlfriend online. If it was a professional hacker, we might have to collaborate with some international organizations. In such a case, can the PCPD cope with the workload? Is there any mechanism for you to work in collaboration with the police force? Can you introduce this mechanism, if any? Where citizens suspect that their personal data privacy are leaked, citizens will question whether they have to report to the police or report to the PCPD. This is indeed one of the issues. I agree that technology spawn a great number of issues in relation to privacy. There is an international trend for digital information involving privacy. We have to heighten regulation, or should we adopt an open attitude to see how we can tie in with the international trend? Does the PCPD have enough capacity to study the search for the privacy data in view of the advanced development of the technology? Open source information or open source intelligence, then there will be a machine search, whether on social media or not, then it will be very much effective. Should we incorporate it into PDPO? This is very controversial. The technologies are improving. Such being the case, does the PCPD have enough capacity to work on this, to study the consistent impact and effect? Commissioner. Thank you, Chair. For the collaboration with disciplinary services, yes, indeed, we do have cooperation. But before the Personal Data Privacy Amendment Ordinance was passed, we have already signed memorandums with the police force and the DOJ. We have an established mechanism by which we work with the police force. We also have division of work. In May 2022, we worked with the police force. We mounted a joint operation. In the operation, that involved the doxing-related activities of police officers and over 70 legislators. It was a joint operation. The case is being followed up by the police force right now. On enforcement, we work closely with the DOJ and the police force. On a global level, we do have close liaison and collaboration with overseas personal privacy protection organizations. We issue cessation notices. When they do not comply with the relevant notices, we will follow up with the overseas counterparts in relation to the developments of technologies. This is exactly an emerging issue. The PCPD is working with other organizations such as OGCIO of the government, Science Park experts. We also work with Hong Kong Computer Coordination Center. We have collaboration with the experts. We have been keeping a close eye on hackers. In which aspect? In relation to computer systems. What are the pitfalls? What are the weaknesses? We have discussions with them, and we also consulted their experts. As we can see that apart from the PCPD colleagues' professional advice, we do need expertise to enhance our analytical capabilities, in addition to giving advice. Next, Mr. Lai Tongkuo. Thank you, Chair. I noticed in the PCPD report, over 10% of the doxing-related cases did not meet the requirements of the notices. For these 10% of the websites, are they overseas websites? If so, I hope that the Commissioner will provide further data in the report. The Commissioner mentioned that the PCPD is very active in partaking in international efforts and also play the role of the chairman. So, how can they play the role in the International Enforcement Cooperation Working Group? So the overseas webs, well, we will have the assistance by the overseas organizations to request the removal of the relevant messages. The Commissioner has been proactively taking part in these organizations. If we have to boost our efforts with the current resources, are they enough? Are they sufficient? Thank you, Mr. Lai. On enforcement at a global level. Thank you, Chairman. Commissioner, regarding the 10% of the websites, the compliance ratio is over 90%. To be exact, the compliance ratio is up to 94%. So for non-compliance, the ratio is only 6%. We can say that all of these non-compliance rates had to do with overseas platforms. If they did not comply with the cessation notices, we will continue to follow up, including issuing warning letters. If they still do not pay heed to the warning letters, we will consider whether we need to cooperate with our overseas counterparts to follow up on these cases. In some cases, when we are in touch with the overseas counterparts, the relevant doxing-related messages were immediately removed. This is a very positive response. And we also had a full collaboration of the overseas counterparts. Some even told us that they would keep a close eye on the relevant channels. They will watch out for any doxing-related messages. If any, they will follow up with us. At the global level, in 2021, starting from this year, we are glad to take part in the Global Privacy Assembly. We were the co-chairperson in the conference in the International Enforcement Cooperation Working Group, IEWG. We also related our efforts to them and also made regular reports. Thus, they are well aware of the situation in Hong Kong. So whenever we were in touch with the overseas counterparts, they were very much willing to collaborate with us. Next, Mr. Lee Chun-kang.
Thank you, Chair. The report from the Commissioner is in great detail. They have done their work using technology in keeping with their times. For myself and friends and family around me, they have been receiving telephone calls. In some of these calls, the caller can correctly identify the name, ID card number of the receiver. If we encounter the situation, should we call you? Should we call the police? We wonder, how come the caller has an ID number? Some can even tell me my date of birth. And there are calls coming from overseas. How do you catch the perpetrator? You said that you will liaise with your overseas counterparts. In some Asian countries, there is a syndicate engaged in fraud. How many cases have been followed up? How many cases have indeed come to fruition? I'm sure you have done more than necessary in Hong Kong, but what about overseas? It seems that there is nothing you can do. How do you protect the privacy of Hong Kong people? Now that the border is open and we're asked to go to the GBA, Commissioner, what have you done in relation to Hong Kong residents living or working in the GBA? Before we hear from the Commissioner, I would like to do something about our time. We have Dr. Hui Lee, who is his first round, and then for the second round, Ms. Priscilla Leung. If there are no others, I'll draw a line, because we do need to make time for the other item. Commissioner. Regarding calls of an unknown origin, and the caller is able to state the name of the receiver, we have received numerous inquiries and complaints. We have to look at the nature of the call or of the case. If the receiver has been deceived of money, it's criminal, and we have to refer the case to the police. We are the Privacy Commissioner Office. Our criminal investigation power is confined to doxing cases. It's for the police to investigate into deception cases. Before there is any criminal elements involved, then we will be able to take up the case. But after that, we will have to forward the case to the police. People living or working in the Greater Bay Area. There will be data sharing in the GBA. We provide professional support and advice to the government and relevant public bodies. For data on the mainland, they will have to conform with Mainland Personal Data Protection Act. Last year, we have issued publication setting out details about relevant mainland laws for individuals and enterprises. If there are important pieces of legislation promulgated, we will issue guidelines or press releases to remind Hong Kong operators. This is something that we have been doing. Next is Dr. Hui Lee. Thank you. I would like to follow up on an issue brought up by Mr. Lai Tong Kok. I thank the Commissioner for the work they've done to stop doxing. After the cessation notice has been issued, and 94% of them have been complied with, but there is still 6% of cases that have not complied. What are the difficulties you have encountered in getting them to comply? You talk about asking the counterpart to deal with it. What about? About gathering of evidence, proving the case? For the 6%, are there a certain website or platform that is the usual culprit? Commissioner, information about the 6%. Thank you. As I was saying, that all of the 6% involved overseas platforms and their operators. We don't have extraterritorial rights under the PDPO. The only thing we can do is to issue cessation notices, and this is added in the 2021 amendment. We don't have other jurisdiction. Regarding overseas platforms, we use warning letters. We send warning letters to the overseas platform telling them that if they fail to comply, it is a criminal offense in Hong Kong. If the offense continues, then we will approach our overseas counterpart to follow up. This is something that we have been doing. We have to follow the procedure. In some cases, the materials in question is removed in the end, perhaps after 3 times of warning letters. But afterwards, there may be some other doxing messages on the same platform. Then we have to go through the same loop. We have to send the cessation notice. It goes round and round. I think it is something that we can't avoid, given the nature of these cases. Who are these operators? Registered in what countries? It's not appropriate for me to comment on individual cases. We're talking about enforcement details. What I can say is that all of them involved overseas platforms. Last, Ms. Priscilla Leung. I can only give you 2 minutes. Thank you. First, I'd like to follow up on your publicity effort. My experience is that when it comes to environmental protection, the housing authority would participate as well. So you can't forget about government departments. Only working with schools and students is not enough. As I said, that when it comes to leaking of personal data, we're talking about public hospitals, airliners, and government departments or public bodies. How can you ensure that regarding government departments and public bodies, details of personal data protection will reach every staff members, especially frontline ones? Say if they receive a USB drive, they know what to do to keep it safe. It's not just about data. It's not just about other matters. It's also about keeping large amount of data safe. We have had some bitter lessons. Ms. Leung. Well, if for these awards, if they have reached international standard, then we will give them a quality mark. For environmental issues, there will be a green label. If you reach a standard, you'll be given a green label, then everyone knows that you have complied with the requirements. Well, we have this award. It was the first time that we had it last year, and we will continue to work on it. That is the Privacy Friendly Awards. That's the end of the report of work of the Privacy Commissioner. We now go into item 5, promotion of the constitutional and the basic law. We'll now invite the administration to come in to join us.
好，有意就呢個議程發問嘅同事都可以。
Members, if you'd like to ask questions, please press the request to speak button. The administration will come in. When you're ready, we will first hear Undersecretary for Constitutional and Mainland Affairs, Mr. Clement Wu, before the floor is open for members to ask questions. Undersecretary. Thank you. I'm happy to be here to give you information about the government's work on the promotion of the Constitution and the Basic Law. The Constitution is the root and origin of the SAR. It is the base. It's the foundation of our country as well. It provides a constitutional basis of the SAR, and it gives us the strongest safeguard for the long-term prosperity and stability of Hong Kong. The government has attached great importance to the promotion and publicity of the Constitution and the Basic Law. In the maiden policy address of the Chief Executive, he announced that the Basic Law Promotion Steering Committee will be renamed the Constitution and Basic Law Promotion Steering Committee. This shows the determination of government to promote the Constitution and the Basic Law. And indeed, there were members suggesting a renaming of the steering committee. This measure in the policy address has answered that. The policy address also talks about further promoting the publicity and education of Constitution and the Basic Law. And I would like to take this opportunity to give you information about our publicity work. You might have noticed about 3 banners. That is, one country is our root. We need the root to be strong for the tree to grow luxuriant. The second one is that we get the support of the motherland and have good connection to the world. And one country, 2 systems is our advantage. The third one is words to the effect that one country principle is upheld then more firmly than the strength of 2 systems is greater. This is to disseminate the information about one country, 2 systems. We have displayed large-scale posters on the exterior of buses, trams, outside tunnels, and at the same time in community halls, government venues, LCSD venues display the publicity information. The objective of one country, 2 systems is to ensure our developmental interest. It is built on the fact that Hong Kong is an inalienable part of Hong Kong. So we have to ensure that the message that one country is the root must run deep for the leaves and branch to get luxuriant is made known to the public. We think that as long as we have a correct understanding of the Constitution of the Basic Law, and we take the initiative to protect our country, and we can play into the advantage of one country, two systems. This will give us plenty of opportunities because the firmer one country is, then the greater the benefit of two systems. We work with the RTHK and we produce various programs. We invite guests to talk to us, and we use everyday examples and in a very plain way explain about the Constitution and the Basic Law. We have last year, second season of Root and Origin, the Constitution, as well as talk about Basic Law with photo. These are broadcast on the RTHK. In order to enhance the publicity effect, we have edited these programs and will put them on different social media platforms. And in order to encourage civic bodies to do research work and publicity work, we have sponsorship scheme, Basic Law Promotion Activity Sponsorship Scheme, and Basic Law Promotion Research Sponsorship Scheme. The scope of the scheme has been expanded to any research work on the Constitution, the Basic Law, and the National Security Law. Through the new steering committee and its 5 working groups, we target different groups, say for example, teachers, students, civil servants, and local community members. We promote the Constitution and the Basic Law. You'll find the details in the paper. For our work in the future, based on the 3 themes, we will plan the promotion of the Basic Law and the Constitution. We'll make use of different activities and different channels to disseminate correct information to the general public. Today we're here with the Civil Service Bureau, with the Education Bureau, the Home and Youth Affairs Bureau, as well as the RTHK to answer questions.
Thank you, Undersecretary. 6 members have pressed the button to request to speak. First, Professor Chan. Thank you, Chair. I'm glad to see that the government over the last year expended a lot of efforts in different channels on the promotion of the Constitution and the Basic Law. But I also think that in the promotion of the Constitution and the Basic Law, we need to focus on the quality. We cannot just bank on the number of seminars or advertisements. Quantity is important, but quality is even more important. We need to see whether we have tightened public awareness about the Constitution and the Basic Law. Do we have regular evaluations of the effectiveness of different initiatives? For example, through questionnaires to see the effectiveness of the initiatives. We can also make improvements based on the feedback by citizens so that we can keep fine-tuning our promotional efforts and make improvements in this regard. There are 6 members who have pressed the button. So 4 minutes, like the last session. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Member. The answer is yes, largely, regarding KPIs. Through objective figures, for example, by increasing the number of events and attendances. To boost promotional efforts, we need figures to reflect our determination and the importance we attach to the efforts. We cannot just quantify them. We emphasize quality as well. In designing publicity efforts and events, we always prioritize quality. For example, we make sure that the activities and events have rich contents. In designing future events, we will also adopt the same standard. We will roll out initiatives and programs with rich contents and lively contents. The CBLP, SC, and the target groups under it will continue to have regard to the contents and the effectiveness. For example, reviewing the attendances and the feedback by attendances and participants, the number of views of promotional clips the effectiveness of the relevant programs will be reviewed. We will also have regard to the development of information technology to refine our promotional efforts in order to evaluate the effectiveness of our efforts. We will also have regard to the prevailing societal atmosphere to appropriately fine-tune our strategies. Next, Dr. Priscilla Leung. Thank you, Chair. The Constitution is very wide in scope. It is also carved in stone. In order to promote the Constitution, the 4th of December has been designated the National Constitution Day. Citizens may find it quite distant at a high level as it regulates the overall regime of the nation. So, on promoting the Constitution, I can see that over the last year, the government has been making a lot of efforts. In Annex 1, you mentioned in the drafting of the material, 4 hours were expended on the discussion from kindergarten to university, bilingual versions, etc. At that time, I also gave opinions. In Hong Kong, the audience, the young people, as well as children, we need to make it easy for them to understand. Using a language that is appropriate to them in order to make sure that it would be easier for them to understand, we need to redouble our efforts. For the RTHK, it was involved, but then when it comes to contents, the CMAB needs to be responsible for fine-tuning the contents and the language to make sure that the audience will find it easier to absorb the contents, or else they will find it too distant from them. For example, how did the spirit of Lion Rock come about? A lot of the previous generations came from mainland to Hong Kong, and blood is thicker than water. Hence, the one country, two systems principle. And you need to pay attention to these elements when you bring them into schools. This is my first opinion. Secondly, in international schools, on English materials, you need to redouble your efforts. Some children are the children of Hong Kongers. They study in international schools, especially for talents overseas. They influence their parents. Their parents will also influence them, and they need to have an accurate understanding of the principle of one country, two systems, the Constitution and the Basic Law. This will be instrumental in our telling the good stories of Hong Kong in the future. Children are very important. We shouldn't make light of their impact on their families. My question is that in paragraph 42, the government will sponsor NGOs or community groups. In Annex 2 of the Basic Law, there are 30 bodies. A lot of them are legal community groups. I am also the chairperson of one of the groups, the Basic Law Promotional Committee. It might be distant from your perspective, nor did you contact us proactively. No matter how many legal professors do you have, in respect of the groups in Annex 3, you did not proactively take the initiative to seek assistance. You may draw reference from the initiatives in green work over the last 2 decades on environmental protection. They did a lot of work on promoting the concept of green in the community level. so they will have an understanding of what they have to do in order to meet the KPI. Now, in a traditional sense, you hold seminars, etc. This is what have been worked on in the past 2 decades. This is close to the heart of many community groups, and you should join hands to work on all these efforts. Thank you, Dr. Priscilla Lang, for your opinions. You have given us very good opinions for different types of promotional initiatives, different target groups, different schools. We have physical or online games engaging both parents and children. There are also hardware promotions in schools, etc. In relation to working with community groups, we have 2 sponsorship programs as well. Apart from these, that are quite passive. When they apply, we approve. That's it. We also took the initiative to touch base with different community groups to sponsor the research, promotion. We now cover the Constitution, the Basic Law, and the National Security Law, the promotion as well, the research as well. So this has to do with how we can sponsor community groups. Groups from the legal sector, we will take your view on board. Thank you for your comments. Anything else to add in relation to education, Ms. Anita Ho? Speaker not coming through. To leverage on different information technologies and online platforms, we have designed a wide spectrum of teaching activities or quizzes, such as some self-learning courses on the basic law. There are also picture booklets to schools. We have made good use of different initiatives, and there is a high level of participation from students. Next, Mr. Lee Chun-kung. Thank you, Chair. On promoting the Constitution and the Basic Law. These are the focuses. But then citizens come across these 2 phrases very frequently in daily life. I believe very few will be able to answer you unless they are legal scholars. On the relationship and the impact of these topics on our daily lives, can you further explain to citizens to tell them these are indeed closely related to us, especially when it comes to national security? We have to expend a lot of efforts to promote the Constitution and the Basic Law, because over the previous 2 decades, after the handover, we didn't fare well in these areas. I appreciate the Deputy Secretary, the Undersecretary, for your hard work. In paragraph 16, the Education Bureau has been adopting a multi-pronged and coordinated approach to enable teachers to learn more about the Constitution and the Basic Law. Since when? In paragraph 49, new teachers. In paragraph 19, teachers will undergo training. So why are we just targeting serving teachers? New teachers. So what about serving teachers? Are we still adopting the mode of multiple choices so that they can regurgitate the points of the Basic Law? I think that the Constitution and the Basic Law have to be learned by way of analysis in order for us to learn the true meaning of these areas. We cannot just rely on regurgitation or any method of recitation or learning by rote, so that we can instill these concepts into children when they are still small, so that they can influence the parents and the friends around them. we can think about promotional vehicles, how we can introduce them to schools. There were different events in the past by the president. We need to move with the times to allow children, the younger generations, to understand the importance of these areas.
I'll first ask Mr. Wu to give us a reply, and then we will hear from Ms. Ho on education issues. Mr. Wu, thank you. I thank the member for his views. I do agree that education is very important. Publicity of the Constitution, the Basic Law, and the National Security Law. The laws themselves are quite rigid. When it comes to telling the public about them, we have to use different ways. Say, for example, production of clips. We work with the RTHK, and in our production of programs, we try to use plain language and make them easy to understand. We also have to make them short so that it will be easily digested. If it's a clip that's only 2 minutes long, with snippets of information or set in an everyday life scenario, it will be easier for them to be absorbed. For the mobile publicity vehicles, they go to schools, they go to different areas in the community. The chairperson himself has helped us in the past in the publicity work at schools. They have asked athletes to tell us how the basic law is related to them. We also asked academics to explain about how the basic law will enable Hong Kong to make good use of our advantages. Students will be able to learn how they can make use of the basic law and the advantage of the one country, two systems. I will now give the floor to the Education Bureau for elaboration. Ms. Ho, please. Regarding teacher training, there are many different ways. Some are for new recruits, some are for teachers with promotion potential. There are different needs for serving schools as well. Some needs enriching of their knowledge. There are advanced courses online. There are also a series of national education, and at the same time there are workshops. At the same time there are training targeting different subjects. In the past 2 years, we have an on-site teacher workshop. We have completed our work covering over 1,000 schools, and that's attended by the entire school. We cover the Constitution, the Basic Law, national education. Some are online courses, some are face-to-face, some are in the form of workshops. Teachers actually are learning when they organize student activities. Now we have resumption of normalcy and the opening of the borders. Will there be more exchanges with, say, Beijing universities or to the GBA? Will the Education Bureau like to reply? I'll have a go first. In terms of exchanges, there are 2 levels. First, students. We have issued notices for mainland exchange activities, and there are also similar visits for teachers. Would the HIAB like to reply? Regarding our bureau, with the border having been opened, actually back in December last year, there was a youth development blueprint. There are many different initiatives we're working with various bureaus and departments on different areas, let's say, for example, enhancement of nationhood, national identity, and national education. There are visits with students, and there are some activities for uniform groups or uniform groups of discipline services. Some of these activities are organized by themselves. Under the Youth Development Blueprint, our bureau is actually working with other bureaus and departments to take forward our work. Mr. Lai Tong Kwok, I would like to follow up on a point made by Professor Chen. The government has launched a variety of publicity and public education activities, but it boils down to one thing. With the amount of resources, manpower devoted to promote the Basic Law and the Constitution, what's the effectiveness? The Undersecretary said that we should not just look at figures. Quality should be our priority. But I failed to hear in his answer, in spite of all the efforts put in, what actual effect have they achieved? What about duty, rights under the Constitution and the Basic Law? Shouldn't the public have a better understanding? If the government thinks they have delivered, based on what do they think that they have reached the target? A lot of work has been put into it. We need to know how much we have got from that and whether there is any room for improvement. I would like to hear more from the Undersecretary. Thank you. Undersecretary, please. I thank Mr. Lai for his comments. Of course, we care about the outcome as well and the effectiveness of our work. It's been 25 years since reunification. And I'm sure Mr. Lai knows very well about what happened at the earlier stage. At that time, the focus was on rights of the Basic Law, and the focus was on two systems over one country. But it's been many years. We think that we need to change our approach. We need to highlight that, the one country precedes the two systems and the Constitution precedes the Basic Law. We have seen a smooth transition into the arms of our country, but there might be some deviation, so we do need to set the path straight. Well, we have been to this panel last year about our promotion of the Constitution, the Basic Law, as well as the National Security Law. We have renamed the steering committee. We will continue our work along this line. We will take into account views of the public as well as the LegCo to see how we can improve. We're talking about our work in the long run. We want to make sure that everyone knows about the rights, duties, and the content of the Constitution and the Basic Law well. Thank you, Ms. Nixie Lam. Thank you. About the correct implementation of the Constitution and the Basic Law and the correct understanding, I do think that you need to do more work. Just now, the Undersecretary talked about new programs. over the new year, I have attended a launching ceremony of the Basic Law. Well, it's delivered in Mandarin English, in the Putonghua English as well as Cantonese. It's now broadcast on television stations. Just now, Ms. Priscilla Leung asked whether your publicity will reach international schools or English-speaking members of the public. We have 2,260 followers on Facebook. Well, there is the posting of a clip of learning of the spirit of the 20th National Progress, and there are only 4 followers, 4 likes. You have already spent resources in the production of these clips, and you use your page to publish these clips. You can also consider other social media platform. It won't cost you much, and you can place adverts targeting different age groups and people from different sectors. You have already spent the money on production. You should make sure that it reaches as many people as possible instead of just coming to us and send to members. You need to let us know that you have done your work to maximize impact. You can also make use of community figures for that to be forwarded to reach the most number of people. We have heard about the narratives of the Constitution and the Basic Law. Press reports only quote what the speakers have said without elaboration. Would you do more work to make sure that people will understand what is said? Mr. Wu. Indeed, I have worked with Ms. Lam to talk about how to more flexibly promote the Constitution and the Basic Law. We do need to step up our efforts. Apart from enhancing publicity of our Facebook, we also have Instagram. Apart from devoting resources to publicize the clips, we will forward the clips to members for them to be forwarded further. We need continuous work to see results. We also use different platforms, and I will defer to my colleagues for supplement. Thank you. I would also like to thank Ms. Lam for promoting our work. We have heard them. There are 20 episodes of the RTHK program broadcast in Mandarin, in Putonghua, in English and Cantonese, in RTHK channel 31, that is Talk About Basic Law with Photo. And there is an RTHK channel on Facebook. We will make use of the 3 languages, Putonghua, English, and Cantonese, to target different groups. We'll also reach students in international schools. For the show, Talk About Basic Law with Photo is set on an everyday life scenario. It's short and easy to understand, targeting different quarters of society. We will use Weibo, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook for our publicity work. Well, there is a small number of followers of the Facebook page, just about 2,000, even fewer for Instagram. So I would ask you to step up your publicity. Perhaps you need to place adverts in different platforms. I don't think you have attained a sufficient coverage. I ask the Undersecretary to take on board members' views.
Ms. Carmen KAN, thank you, Deputy Chair. Thank you, Undersecretary, for making a report to us together with his colleagues on such an important topic. The Basic Law Promotion Steering Committee has been renamed as the Constitution and Basic Law Promotion Steering Committee. This is in response to the comments made by legislators, and I'm one of them. CBL-PSC is led by the Chief Secretary for Administration. I have noticed that in a policy address, the DOJ has established the Rule of Law Steering Committee. For the collaboration between these two subcommittees, CMAB Security Bureau, CSB DOJ HYAB, led by the Secretary for Justice. So what is the focus? Thank you, Deputy Chair. Thank you, Ms. Carmen KAN. As the name implies, CBL-PSC aims at promoting the Constitution, the Basic Law, as well as the national security law. These are the topics the Chief Secretary for Administration chairs it. And our topic is to promote the Constitution, the Basic Law, and the national security law. The Secretary for Justice announced the establishment of the Rule of Law Education Steering Committee, which promotes the correct understanding of the rule of law, to promote education on the rule of law and training. The steering committee will provide opinions in relation to rule of law leaders. We will prepare materials with the rule of law being the focus and the pivot. It revolves around the basic law, the national security law, and the legal framework. Opinions will be provided on different topics. We will also take forward the work. We promote the Constitution, the Basic Law, and the national security law. The focus is a little bit different. The one with us is chaired by the Chief Secretary for Administration, whereas the other one is chaired by the Secretary for Justice. I hope that we will be able to achieve synergy. For fear of repetition of efforts, as the Undersecretary report, there are 5 major target groups under the CBL-PSC. They are responsible for promotion. Because of the differences in target groups, there will be different focuses. For rule of law training, it emphasized train the trainer. Of course, the one being educated may span different areas. Is that the focus? Undersecretary, well, you can say so. This is synergy. Through 5 different target groups, we promote to different brackets of people, to teachers and students, civil servants, young people in local community, industrial, commercial, and professional sectors, community outside Hong Kong. There are a total of 5 different target groups. For the industrial, commercial, and professional sectors, they have their own features. Some of them are local communities. Some of them are from the education sector. The focuses are different. Some have a more targeted approach. the understanding of the rule of law is different from that of the Constitution, the Basic Law, and the national security law. Some will go in tandem, whereas some will go independently. I agree with Ms. Carmen KAN that we should aim at achieving synergy. The topics are different, and for the mode, the CBLPSC has different subcommittees reaching different groups of people, whether it be trainer, the rule of law, etc. I hope that members will pay attention to what Ms. Carmen KAN said. There is no DOJ representative here, but we should aim at synergy when we take forward our work. Second round, Dr. Priscilla Leung. Thank you, Deputy Chair. In the consultation papers, CMAB ranks the first. It comes as the first one. So we believe that you have the major responsibility, followed by the DOJ and the Education Bureau. They should go together, whereas the remaining will help with promotion. I have said on a couple of occasions, for assessments in the CSB, you adopt the multiple choice as a mode of assessment. And I disagree with this. I do not agree with this. When teachers are tested in relation to the basic law, reference was drawn from the test for civil servants. I hope you will take it more seriously. Can you fine-tune the level of difficulty of the test? As I said, the Constitution law is at a very high level. It is carved in stone, but then it is inextricably linked with the fate of all the nationals. If you study the Chinese history well, you will be able to tell that it reflects different difficulties and experiences of our nationals, reflecting their status quo. If you understand the role of the Constitution played in different ages, then you will be able to tell, or you will be able to understand the development of our country. Against this backdrop, I can only make this request. I have said on a couple of occasions in the panel on education in relation to the assessments for civil servants. In this panel on constitutional affairs, I belabor this point as well. Education shouldn't take the form of multiple choice questions. You will not hammer home nationhood just with multiple choice questions. They couldn't just develop nationhood by rote learning. They have spent 2 hours on reciting the basic law, but then do they really get the hang of it? Do they really understand the contents? How much do they understand? What is the relationship between the Constitution and the basic law? I believe that they know nothing. The Constitution is not written in the ancestry of the basic law, and thus the Constitution is not applicable to Hong Kong. And you have to face the question, the situation squarely. These misleading notions have taken root in the community. Just adopting the multiple choice question wouldn't solve the problem. It is just for convenience, for the assessors, the new teachers, the new civil servants. When you have to promote the basic law, if you have to select the one accurate, correct answer out of the 4, this shouldn't be the way. When I studied, my teacher told me that you shouldn't just rely on multiple choice questions. That will not stand you in good stead. That will not make you improve. From the perspective of long-term memory, there are 3 other incorrect answers, then you will have one only correct answer. I have belabored my point in different panels, and I will continue to make my point. We have to deepen the understanding and the value of the basic law as well as the Constitution in the current Hong Kong. They play a very important role. Thank you, Dr. Priscilla Leung. When Dr. Priscilla Leung said that, well, CMAB comes up first, I will invite the CMAB to reply first. Please be succinct. Thank you, Dr. Priscilla Leung. Before I defer to my colleagues, I'd like to say a few words. When they join the civil service, that is the first layer. There will be ongoing training or assessments when they are considered for promotion. I believe that will not be just multiple choice questions as assessment, but that I identify with Dr. Priscilla Leung. Assessments are only part of it. How we can make sure teachers and civil servants have a correct understanding of the Constitution, the basic law, and the national security law, or trainer, how they can instill these concepts or how they can promote these concepts to Hong Kong citizens. Their own understanding is of critical importance. Thank you, Deputy Chair. I agree with Dr. Priscilla Leung. To understand the constitutional order that is inextricably linked to national affairs, civil servants need to have a complete understanding of the history of the country. As the Undersecretary said, that fundamental test is really the first layer. After they have joined the service, we will continue to deepen their understanding of the relevant areas. We hope that we will not just work on provisions. Rather, we need to cultivate a sense of nationhood in them, apart from updating the course contents. After civil servants join the civil service, how has their identity changed as a public service provider? How are they different from working in a private organization? How can they have a concept of citizen-centric service concept? We need to have real stories so that they will have resonance. Although we can't do this overnight, we hope that they will be able to develop a sense of nationhood and a love for their country. Along this line, we have been doing a lot of work. Thank you, Dr. Leung, for your opinions, and we will relate your comments to my colleagues in relation to assessments. We will try to fine-tune the assessment method. Professor Chen Wen-Kwong has pressed the button to speak in the second round. After this round, this discussion item will come to an end. Please be succinct. Thank you, Deputy Chair. I'd like to ask a simple question. In promoting the Constitution and the basic law, we not only have to be comprehensive, we need to be targeted as well. Article 23 legislative work is of wide concern in the community. The Chief Executive said that he expected within this year or the coming year, the relevant legislative work will be completed. In the promotion of the Constitution and the basic law, will you spend more time on the contents of Article 23 so that citizens will have a better understanding of the article? Because Article 23 is the constitutional responsibility of Hong Kong, and actively developing a love for the country is the responsibility of every single citizen. So we need to enhance the understanding of the Constitution and the basic law of citizens, at the same time allaying the concerns over the legislative work in relation to Article 23, so that we will be able to take forward the legislative work in relation to Article 23. We'll the Undersecretary do more in this regard so that citizens will have a better understanding?
主席，多謝陳議員。
Undersecretary, thank you, and I'd like to thank Mr. Chen for his view. Well, for the promotion of the Constitution and the Basic Law, we include the National Security Law. The Security Bureau is a member of the Constitutional Basic Law Promotion Steering Committee. For legislation of Article 23 is under the lead of the Security Bureau. Currently, we know that we have the Constitution and the Basic Law and the National Security Law, so we focus on these three areas. When Article 23 is passed, we will then consider our work at that stage. Currently, the main focus of the steering committee is to promote these three areas. Thank you. This is the end of this agenda item. Thank you. Item 6. Any other business? If there is no other business, meeting adjourned. Thank you.